Hey there, friends. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this session today, where we're talking about how to implement small group math instruction during a pandemic. This is a topic that I felt like was super important right now. I've done some polling in some of my groups, as well as just kind of chatting with the people that I work with, and I realized that implementing any kind of small group instruction right now is a huge challenge for many teachers. I know that for many people right now, they may be completely teaching virtually, right? So you don't see your students in person at all. And then many people who are teaching in person are, of course, trying to practice social distancing and some of the other safety precautions that we've been asked to practice at this time. So, kind of doing the norm is uh, is not as easy as it was, let's say, back earlier this year. So, I thought this would be a very timely topic for us to talk about right now as we prepare to go into second semester. So, I'm super excited about sharing this with you. If you don't know much about me, doing small groups in the classroom is really something that I feel like is a hallmark of the work that I did. I love doing small group math work, specifically doing math stations. That was something that was a regular part of instruction. So during this time, I've really been thinking about how I can support teachers in offering suggestions on how to continue to do that work while we are in the midst of a pandemic and have some pretty heavy restrictions on what we're able to do in the classroom. So we're going to talk about all of those things today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my slideshow here. All right, so you should see me down there in the bottom corner. So again, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're here and you're listening, please type in the comments. Let me know where you are listening from or where you're teaching from. I'd also like to know how you're teaching. Are you virtual? Are you doing like a hybrid model or blended model where your students are sometimes in the classroom, sometimes at home, or are you completely back in person? And I'm also testing to see if I can see your comments. So please type in the comments and say hello. I'd love to hear from you and know who's out there listening during your holiday break. I know I've heard different things from people. Some people say, of course, that they don't want to do any schoolwork on their holiday break, which I totally understand and respect. And others say that they really use this as an opportunity to get a jump start on the new semester. And I feel like I was most likely in that category. Let me switch tabs here. Maybe I'm just not seeing. Okay. I don't see any comments. I'm hoping that you're able to comment. I don't see them pop up. Okay. Oh, perfect. I do see them. Okay. Mine was just taking a little second there for them to show up. So hi, Markeisha. You're teaching remotely. Okay, North Carolina. Hi, Jennifer. You're teaching in Albany, New York, and you're all virtual. Yeah. And hi, Stacy. I'm glad that you're listening. Yeah. So I know a lot of the country right now is teaching, or maybe going to, especially after the holidays, a completely virtual model. I know here in Texas, we are in person and virtual. Students do have an option in most places. There may be a few places where they may not have an option, but in most of our public schools here, our students have an option. And we've got school districts where 50% of the students are at home, and we've got school districts where almost 100% of students are back in school. So we have a gamut of things happening, I'm sure, all across the country. All right, I see Haley teaching fourth grade in Texas. Hybrid model, yeah. And the hybrid model is something that is, I think, really popping up as well, where you have students that are in the classroom and then students that are learning at home, and you're responsible for both. And that has its own unique challenges. There's some really awesome tools that you can use to kind of facilitate that. That may be for another discussion, but I'll try to highlight a couple of those things today. I want to say, though, as much as this is a challenge for us, this is also an incredible opportunity for us to grow as educators and to really utilize the tools that are out there. And I just want to stop for a moment, and I want you to think back to this time last year and where you were just in your teaching, where you were in your use of technology. And I just want to celebrate you, and I want you to celebrate yourself in how far you've had to come in this time, right? We've all taken tremendous leaps and bounds to get to the place that we're at. And I know for some people, you came kicking and screaming because technology is not your thing. I totally hear that. But I do want you to celebrate yourself for the work that you're doing and for just the new frontiers that we're forging here with our students trying to make learning happen under the conditions that we're in. So, again, I want to celebrate you. Hi, Patty, teaching remotely in Oklahoma. Hi, Carolyn and Joanna, teaching in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Been in person until right before the break, and then going back in person in January. Yeah, so I'm actually teaching in person as well, and I'm not actually in the classroom. I'm a campus administrator, but I have to say I miss teaching every single day. And this, all of the things that have happened and what we've been asking teachers to do has really excited me and has ignited a passion for education that I hadn't seen in a little while. So I'm excited about getting to work with you and getting to share some tips and strategies with you. And then we've got Leslie teaching from Colorado, fourth grade, and Nicole in South Florida, fifth grade math and science. Fifth grade math and science is my favorite thing. So hello, Nicole. All right, with that, we're gonna continue into what we're talking about today. So what's our purpose? What are we doing here today? So in today's training, we're going to talk about how to use virtual tools to create small group learning experiences, whether you're teaching in person with social distancing, in a hybrid learning environment, or in a virtual classroom. So we're going to kind of hit all of those things. So really the purpose today is to look at how to use virtual tools to make our small group instruction happen. So that's really what our goal is here today. And I just want to ask you, if you guys want to give me a quick yes or no, are you doing any small group instruction right now? So just give me a quick yes or no. You can give me a thumbs up if you're doing small group instruction in some form or fashion in your classroom. Just give me a thumbs up or a yes or a no in the chat. And there may be a slight delay. I'm not actually using the Facebook platform to do this. I'm actually using another platform that's going through Facebook. So it might take just a second. So if you see a lag, it's probably that. Okay, so Jennifer says no. And I suspect that for many of you, you're probably not doing a lot of small group instruction right now. And I totally hear that. Yeah, I see several no's, some yeses. That's great. It's great to hear. I know that it's a challenge for sure. Okay, so here's our focus question for our time together. How do we create small group learning experiences during a pandemic with learners in a variety of environments? And that is certainly a challenge, right? That's one of the biggest things, that you may have students who are learning at home as well as students who are learning in the classroom, or all of your students may be in the classroom, but you're not able to pull any small groups. And I know in my neck of the woods here, that's something that we're certainly experiencing, and that teachers are really trying to find a way to get around. I have all of my students here in the classroom, but you're sitting on basically on islands, right? We even have plexiglass shields that are around our desk. And students really aren't able to come together in small groups, or teachers aren't able to pull a small group together. So how do I make small group instruction happen? So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so I've got 5 strategies that I want to share with you. And before I get started, I think it's really important that we think about where we are right now. Again, I said that this is an opportunity for us to grow. And in that opportunity, we have to reimagine learning and what it means for our students to learn and what it means for us to teach. So some of the ideas I will share with you today, you might think about, well, why would I do that? Well, it's within the constraints that we have, right? We have to work within the constraints that we have. So I want you to maybe put aside what you're used to doing or how you're used to thinking about small group instruction. And I want you to be open to new ideas and new strategies and ways of accomplishing the same goals that you're used to accomplishing in previous school years, right? This is a school year like no other school year. So as we go through, I just want you to keep that in mind. We have to reimagine learning in order to accomplish the same goals that we would have accomplished at this time last year, or even possibly this time next year. I'm hoping that we do have some time for Q&A. I don't want to take up a ton of your time. I know that we're in the middle of a break, and I encourage teachers to rest and relax over their break. So I do not want to take a lot of your time, but I will hopefully have some time for us to do a Q&A at the end. So with that, we're going to jump right into the strategies. So 5 strategies. Here's the first one. Using breakout rooms. And I know some of you are like, oh, breakout rooms, breakout rooms, breakout rooms. I keep hearing about breakout rooms, but breakout rooms are your friend. And as many of you know, Google Meet now has the breakout room capability. So this summer, I did some work with virtual turn and talks, and I talked a lot about Zoom because at the time, that was the breakout room structure that we had available. But now Google Meet also has one. So I want you to think about how you can run your small groups using breakout rooms. So first, you could create your teacher table with a breakout room. So your students can be sitting at their desk and participating in a small group with you. And I know some of you may be that you might be puzzled by that right now, but I want you to think about how you can make that work. And I want to share with you that in the area that I'm in, our students are not attending any classes outside of their classroom. So if they were receiving dyslexia services, if they were receiving any type of interventions, those services are now happening inside of the classroom. So those teachers have their Google Meet sessions set up, and the students participate from their classroom while their classroom activities are still going on. So it is possible for our students to participate in a Google Meet session, like a breakout room session, while they're in the classroom and there's other things happening. We just have to figure out how to make sure that they have an environment where they can do that. Do they need headphones? You know, they have the headphones with the little microphone. Do they need those headphones to kind of keep them a little more engaged? Do they need to be situated in a space in the classroom where it's easier for them to hear or for them to concentrate? We just have to think through those logistical issues, but we can use breakout rooms within the classroom setting to have a small group. In fact, I have some colleagues that I work with who say that they do small groups while students are working on their assignments because they can't pull students to a table to work. They just have a small group session open, like a Google Meet session that students can log into, and they can ask their questions right there. So again, remember we talked about reimagining learning. We have to think about how we can use the tools that we do have available right now and are accessible to us to accomplish the same goals. You can also have students working in small groups. I've had a couple of teachers tell me recently that they don't know how to do small group work anymore because they can't have kids pulled together. Yeah, that's totally true. You may not be able to pull kids into a small group, but you could have them join a breakout room session together and complete some type of task or an activity together in a group. Again, they can be working in the classroom, and even cooler, if those of you that are hybrid, if you have breakout rooms, you could have some of your kids at home and breakout room sessions with some of your students who are actually in the classroom. I know that there's some issues with breakout rooms, and I want to acknowledge that up front. I know that it's not as cut and dry as we'd like for it to be. However, remember what we talked about, the reimagining education and learning. That is the tool that we have available to us right now to get our students to collaborate. So I want you to think from that viewpoint, how do I make them work for me? What are the challenges? How can we overcome them? So if you're going to use breakout rooms, some of the things that I have been sharing with teachers over the last couple of months, and I also share with the teachers that I work with, start small. Don't try to do 5 breakout rooms at one time. Maybe do 1 breakout room or 2 breakout rooms, but don't have all of your students, don't just say, we're going to do breakout rooms, here's how it works, and boom, send the kids into breakout rooms. That's not going to work out well. That's not something that we would, if you think about it, that's not probably how you would approach anything in the classroom, right? Just to just bust out with this. So we're going to do this right now and expect it to go well. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So we have to build up to it, right? So you want to start small, maybe starting with that teacher table or starting with that kind of help table where when students are working, they can join you for a help session. So you want to start small, work into that. We have to teach our students how to use breakout rooms successfully if we want them to work. So start small. Of course, teach your expectations. Boy, teach the heck out of your expectations for breakout rooms. Develop them together as a class. Post them somewhere, whether it's where you have it posted maybe on Google, a Google slide where students can refer back to it. You have it posted in the classroom where students can see it, but teach those expectations and let them know what is expected of me in a breakout room. And then you have to build community. I can't tell you how many breakout rooms I've participated in recently with students while I was observing teachers, and the students didn't talk. And I don't know always if that's because I'm in the space or if that's how it normally is. But in some of my conversations with teachers, I've learned that that's often what they walk into when they go in to check on the group. So one of the things I want to stress to you how important it is to build community with your students and build community in those groups. Part of that starting small means that you may not be able to change the groups for a little bit. We want students to be comfortable being in the room together and talking to each other. You may need to provide structures for them to do that, providing A and B partners. If you're a Kagan cooperative learning person, there's lots of structures that you can teach your students to use that will help them have a productive conversation in those breakout rooms. But we have to teach them those skills. We can't just send them into the breakout rooms and expect that they know what to do because they can sit in a group in the classroom and talk together. It's just not going to happen. So you want to teach your expectations, give them a structure to use. And then certainly, most importantly, I think we have to monitor them closely. The students need to know that you could pop into that breakout room at any time. And you need to model that popping in and out of breakout rooms so they have no idea when you might pop in. Of course, if you're in the classroom, you're in person and your students are using breakout rooms, you have a great advantage because you can just walk around and see what's happening in those rooms. I know the challenge is certainly when we have students who are working at home and they're in breakout rooms and we don't know what's going on. Again, expectations, having those structures set up, and closely monitoring them is really what's going to get you what you want from the breakout rooms. So just to recap strategy one, breakout rooms are your friends. I encourage you to try them to create some shared workspaces. It's also a great opportunity just to have students talking together, even playing games. You know, you can use a game, a cooperative game via Google Slides that two students, I wouldn't do four, but you could have like two students working on a cooperative game together if you've got a digital game that they can play. Hopefully I'll be able to talk about some of that towards the end. Okay, here's the next strategy. Use digital activities to decrease material sharing and handling. I'm not sure about all of you, but I know here in my area, we have been discouraged from really sharing materials. So that brings us some challenges in how we're able to pass out worksheets or pass out activities or even games. I know one of the things I love to do in math stations is play games and use manipulatives. So right now, those things are a bit of a challenge because you have to think about how am I going to distribute these? Like, do I need to let them sit for a few days in order to let any germs that may be present go away? You know, those are all things that you have to consider. So using digital activities, digital tools really helps decrease material sharing and handling of materials. And I'm going to come back to that one. I want to share some things with you at the end if we have time, but I want to make sure I get through all of the strategies first. Okay. Actually, I do want to, before I move on to the next one, I wanted to just give a few examples of this. So I mentioned digital activities, but digital activities could be things that are built with Google Apps, things for Google Slides and Google Forms. Also, boom cards. If you are not familiar with boom cards, I encourage you to do some searching on the web for blog articles about boom cards. I think I've got one that you could easily access from my page. You can go to Boom Learning and check out boom cards. Those are fabulous tools to use in small group instruction. Of course, our tried and true tools, web apps and games. Then, of course, there are math picture books that you can find like on YouTube that someone's reading. Probably not, they're not supposed to be doing that, but you could find them, they're out there. And you could build some activities around math and literature where students are listening to the book and then completing some questions, some math related questions about the book. And then something that I've seen a lot of lately, digital escape rooms. Those are all really awesome tools that you can use in your your small group math instruction that will help decrease that material sharing. And then also, if you are interested in tools like Nearpod and Pear Deck, Those are fantastic tools because you can actually watch to see what students are doing. So I know one of the other issues that I hear from teachers a lot is monitoring and knowing that the students are actually working. And so those are some tools I've seen teachers really, really using well to monitor what students are doing during their time in breakout rooms or even just in their independent work times. Okay, here's the next strategy. The strategy 3 is training student helpers to serve as tech support. So one of the other issues that I know I hear from teachers and I've experienced myself both before our pandemic and now, of course, during our pandemic, is how students can get help. It's often really hard to run a teacher group when you have students working in other activities because sometimes they need help. And so you think to yourself, what do you do? And now we've got technology, so we've added an extra layer of support that may be needed for our students. So what I want to encourage you to do here is to utilize your students to provide the support. So first, you may consider having like a team leader or group leader for each group that is a responsible person that you feel like would be able to answer most of the group questions. And then the group members go to that person for support. For tech issues, we all know we have some tech whizzes out there who know this technology better than we do. And so you could train them in specific areas if you want to make sure that they are able to answer questions on specific things. But I would encourage you to get some of your students to play the role of support your tech support, your geek squad, so to speak. So when students have issues with their technology, they can communicate with that person to get help with that issue. And I've actually seen that work really well in a classroom. That's a strategy I used to use myself, and I saw that in a classroom just recently with students being the tech support for the classroom. And I feel like that's a great thing. It's a real confidence booster for those students. So you could decide either that's a rotating position. If you've got multiple kids that would be good at that. It could be a rotating position, or if you have some type of system for it being like a classroom job that didn't change. Maybe it was a 9-week job or a 6-week job, whatever your reporting period is, or even a semester job where that student could have that position and they're the tech support for your class when you're doing small group instruction so that students are not having to come to you with their questions. All right, next strategy. Another big one, especially right now, I think about myself when it comes to managing my stations. I had baskets set up at the front of the room, and that's where students knew where to find all of the materials for the stations, and they stayed there all the time. So that was my way of managing my materials. But of course, now again with that decreased material sharing, those kinds of things are not as easily accomplished. So I encourage you to find a system for managing activities and sharing materials. You could do that via like Google Sites. I don't know if you've had a chance to visit Google Sites lately, but they've made some incredible improvements. I used Google Sites many, many years ago, and it felt like it was really techy at the time. You almost it feels like you almost had to know HTML coding in order to build sites. But right now, the sites are super easy to build. You could build one within a few minutes. So what I would encourage you to do, unless you have a class website where you could do this, is create like a classroom hub. So you could build a site where each week you put the date and have, you could organize it even by rotation, like rotation 1, these are the materials that you need, and everything's linked in that one place. You can also put help videos there, any type of tutorials that students might need in order to utilize the materials or the technology. Again, that's then helping with that support, right? They don't need as much support if you provided them videos and tools that they can use to access how to do different things. Where do I find my login? How do I log into the site? Having just a list of all the sites that you use. One of the things I used to love about my classroom webpage is that all of the games that we played in class were located on the classroom webpage. So when they got to the station where they were using technology, and maybe this week we're doing web games, I would tell them, you can choose from these games, and they knew how to go to our webpage and to access those games. So it became kind of the hub of where I kept all of our web games and all of the activities that we did on the web. They were all housed in one place on that classroom website. So Google Sites is a free tool that you can use, very easy to create. You could probably take just a couple of hours, figure out how it works. I'm sure there's lots of tutorial videos out there, and create something that would be useful for your students in helping you manage your station materials. You could also use Google Classroom. You can, of course, deploy your station activities and materials through Google Classroom. You could use a learning path. If you attended my webinar back in the summer, I talked about learning paths, something that you share with students, and everything is linked in that slide deck. It's like Google Slides, and everything's linked there. In the picture there, I have a little bit of an example of that. And then, of course, if you're using a learning management system, I know a lot of school districts have gone to those because it makes it easy to kind of have all of your things housed in one place, like Schoology. That's another place that you could have as your kind of classroom hub for where all of your small group materials are located. All right. And the last strategy, before we have a little fun with digital activities, is to use the virtual support tools that you have available via video conferencing to monitor students. So a couple of things, as I mentioned earlier, I've seen some teachers using Pear Deck and Nearpod, and they've been, and Desmos actually, and they've been watching what students are doing from their teacher station. So they can see what students are doing on their computers, see where they are in the process of all of the slides, and they can actually even give feedback. So that's something that you could do. I know that that's difficult to do when you're working with students, but if you set things up where you have your small group that you're working with, and you have a moment where those students are working on something alone, then you could provide some feedback or check on what your other students are doing while you're working with that small group. On that same note, I've seen teachers have maybe 2 computers that they can use to be involved in a small group on one computer, and then be watching like breakout rooms or something on another computer. So that's another option. Something else you can do if you're using like Google Meets, or even in Zoom, if your students are in breakout rooms, you can use like those raise your hand tools for students to ask questions. Now, of course, we want to teach our students to keep going. And that kind of goes back to what were the tools you were using initially? Like, how do you normally have students ask for help in your classroom? I know some people may, like, it might be just raise your hand and you get to them when you can, or they put like a red cup on their desk that says that they need help. They may ask a neighbor, which that's always my first go-to, is ask another teammate. But if there's a question that they needed from me, I might ask them to raise their hand or put a red cup on their desk so that I could see, and then I would, ask them to lower their hand, and I'd get to them when I could, but to ask them to keep working. So you could do something similar. They could raise their hand in a breakout room, from a breakout room session, so that you know that they need help, and you can get to them when you can. You can also have a chat session open where they can chat with you and ask questions. Again, if you've got that other computer that you have available, and it can just be a computer for you chatting with students about questions that they may have, that's something that you could do. You could also even create a discussion board like on Padlet, and students can ask questions there. And again, if you've got that extra computer available, you can be responding to their questions when you have a chance to do so. So those are all some tools that you can use virtually to support students while you're working in small group instruction. So let's do just a little bit of a recap of those things before we go on to the next thing. So we talked about using breakout rooms. And again, breakout rooms is going to be your best bet for being able to have students work virtually in small groups, even if they're all in the same classroom. Having them work in a breakout room allows them that opportunity to communicate with each other. We just have to think about the logistics of that and how it will work, and will all students be able to hear each other and to communicate. So those are some of the things we have to consider. And then using digital activities, which I'm going to talk more about here in just a minute. Employing student helpers to help you during small group instruction so that you can really stay focused on your small group. So either using student helpers as your team leaders that would help their group, or as your tech support for when there are problems with computers, students can go to those tech support people in your classroom for help. And then management systems. How will you manage your small group instruction? Using Google Sites, using a learning management system like Schoology, using Google Classroom, or using like a learning path. Just a simple Google slide that has all of their activities embedded in it works beautifully. And then the virtual support. How will you monitor students? I know that's always an issue. Teachers are concerned about, how do I sit with this group and work? And in this case, how do I work with this group maybe in a Google Meet session while all the other students are doing things? How can I monitor to see what they're doing? We talked about some monitoring tools. If you're using like Desmos or Pear Deck, you can monitor what they're doing from your computer system if you've got that set up. You can also have a chat session open where students can come into that chat session and ask questions there, and you can respond to them as you have a chance to. You can use a discussion board to have them ask questions, and you can respond again when you have a moment. So those are 5 strategies for how you can implement small group instruction while following a lot of the guidelines and things that we have in place right now. All right, so before we end our session today, I did want to show you up close and personal some digital activities. So let me tell you, I think back to when I first started using computers and web tools for my math stations, which was something that I loved. I've told this story before. I kind of went around the school trying to grab some extra computers that were about to be thrown out and asking the principal if they could put them in my classroom so that I had these extra tools for students, because using the computer during math stations was something that I really, really wanted to be able to do, and doing some of the web games. And also I use PowerPoint a lot. I think about now what tools we have available. I was using PowerPoint, building activities for students on PowerPoint and then sharing them with them. But they had to, of course, go to my folder on the drive. And they had to get it from my folder and save it on their folder. So many steps, y'all, so many steps. And now we have so many tools that make it a lot easier for us to do those types of digital activities with students. So I wanted to just, for a moment, share with you some examples of digital activities, because I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with what you can do with those. So we're past the PowerPoint days where you set up the PowerPoints and shared them with students, and then they had to save them, do save as, which is a problem, right? They would never remember to do save as. They would just want to save, and then they would save over my work or someone else's work. So we're past those days, and now we have Google Slides, which allows us to do some really cool things. So let me pop over there really quickly. I'm going to hope that you can see this. I have too many screens open there. All right, so this is a set of digital activities that I created. This is a set for 5th graders. And so what I want to show you are just some things that you can do with digital activities. Now you can use this, you can create these yourself. They're pretty simple to create, but I just want to give you some ideas of what you can do for activities with your students during small group instruction, and just the capabilities that we have to have students respond virtually so that they're not having to use paper and pencil tasks. And you're going to see me look over here because my other screen's over here. So I'm looking over here as I'm demonstrating this for you. But here, what you'll notice is this, I think this is the coolest part of this. And the thing that I didn't have when I was using PowerPoint is that all of this, the text that you see here is actually in the background. So students can't move any of this. All of this is in the background. It's not movable for them. They can't even move it off the slide. It's not an image that's in the back. It's actually in the background of the slide. So what they can do is type over it, right? So I've created some text boxes here that they can type in to answer the questions. And I even have images here that they can move. So here they're building like an area model for something. And so they can move these images here. This makes this a really awesome small group activity when you're working in a pandemic, right? No pencil and paper involved. All you have to do is set it up and create some opportunities for students to participate digitally. And we've got, our worksheets and our activities here on the computer. So I'm just going to go through a couple of these. This is a division activity where students are practicing long division using the standard algorithm, and they're just plugging in numbers where they go. So these are text boxes. Again, the background there, they can't move anything from the background. They can just type in the spaces where I have it indicated for them to type. This is a graphing activity. This is actually a scatter plot activity where they're building a scatter plot. And so here they're going to move these dots to wherever they need to go on. And so that one's too big, right? So great thing about technology and using stuff digitally, I can press the undo button. Undo's my friend. Here they're just moving these points to where they go. So this one is 1 and 25. So they go here. All right, so they would that's how they build it. And I use the arrow keys to do that, but it's much easier to use the mouse when you're building that scatter plot there. Here's another one. Here I just have some circles where they can circle, indicate what their response is, and then they can type here to show how to complete this multiplication problem. Again, here we've got text boxes. So notice that the activity, again, is in the background. So all I've done is put text boxes on top. Now, and some of you I know are saying, well, I don't have time to create all those things. I totally understand. Pop a worksheet in here. Take one of your worksheets that you've used previously and make it into an image, pop it in the background. And you can do that just here. Click background, you would choose your image, go to the file on your computer, and then it shows up in your background. And you can put text boxes on top of it so students can work digitally that way. Something else I love, again, is just being able to move things. So I've created these. These are images that I've added to this document. So they're just pictures that are from my computer that I've added, and students can do a sort here to show which column it should go in. So just really, really fun ways that students can interact with slides virtually. And so it allows us to do some of the same things that we would do with paper and pencil, but now we're using those tools in a virtual environment, and students are able to work with digital activities. This one of my favorites. I'm not sure about you guys if you're familiar with Marcy Cook. I used to love using her telling activities. That's something that I really love to use in the classroom. And so I've kind of taken that idea and made them into some things that go along with the standards. So not just necessarily critical thinking tasks, but some of the things that go along with the standards. And so here, students would move these tiles into the different spots. So again, taking some simple tasks that we've done in the past and creating them in a digital world so that our students can work with them from a distance, or work with them in a situation where you're not able to use a lot of pencil and paper. So these are just some examples of some digital tools. And I know some of you are thinking about grading. How do you grade this type of task? I'll tell you, I didn't grade a lot of my station material, my station tasks. I just didn't do it. Stations were for practice for me. And so if I'm going to grade something, I'm going to give them maybe an assessment at the end of all of the stations to assess them on particular skills. In this particular case, if we're using the digital slides, then I might choose one slide that I want to grade, but I'm not going to grade all of them. And while I'm sharing this with you, I want to share with you, let's see, I need to change my tabs here. So this is, I pulled those slides from several different activities that I have, but I wanted to just share with you, this is one set of activities. So this is order of operations. And you can see here that students have a review, and then there's a couple of practice activities that students can look at. And they've got some challenge activities. So we talked about differentiation. With this type of tool, I could create one set of slides for the class and then differentiate that for different groups. So for my high group, maybe I just choose one of the practice tasks and I give them 2 challenges. For my low babies, maybe I give them all 3 practice tasks in the lower level challenge that they could do if they have time and they want to work on it. For my middle group, I might give them 2 of the practice tasks and then 1 challenge task, and add the other one as you can do this if you have time. So it's easy to differentiate these for students. You can just delete the slide out and share it with them. So again, that classroom hub that we talked about is a great place for you to house these. So each group could see what work they're supposed to do, and you would just have their slides linked to the classroom hub. So it's a paperless, it's easy to implement. Students can manipulate this very easily just using regular tools. Now you do have to, of course, they have to know how to use Google Slides. So they have to know how to work with text boxes. They have to know how to drag things around. And again, that's that start small piece. We want to show them what to do so they have those experiences, but then they're able to work on them on their own. This is a journal task. And so students would just type in the box. You can delete my type here, and then students would just type their response to the box. This particular set of activities also includes a quiz. It's not linked right now, but it's part of Google Forms. And so students would take the quiz after completing the slides. And this is, again, a really great way for you to assess. So you don't have to grade everything. The purpose of stations is really supposed to be for practice. I hear so many teachers say, like, I'm not sure, it's a lot of grading. I just don't know how to get it all done. Don't grade it. Pick 1 or 2 things to grade if you need the grades. But what I find to be more important is getting that assessment piece from it. So having like a quiz that students would take after this, or using the journal as your assessment piece. But I would not grade every single thing that students do in stations. So just wanted to share this with you. I wanted to give you a kind of a visual of what digital activities look like. I feel like we talk about that kind of in the teacher community, especially over the past 8 or 9 months. People have talked about using digital activities, but I'm not sure that teachers really understand what digital activities are and how they can be useful for you. I know you're probably, again, wondering, where can I find these? I don't have time to put them together. I totally hear that. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a little bit out of the norm, because my favorite thing to do, other than seeing the light bulb go on in my students when something finally clicked, was creating activities. I love creating lessons and activities for my students. So for me, this is something that I would really enjoy doing, but I know for many people, it's not something that they enjoy. So where can you find these activities? You can find them all over the web, guys. You can find them on, of course, on Teachers Pay Teachers. There's lots of free stuff out there. I encourage you to look for free things that you can try in your classroom. I talked about boom cards. Those are basically digital task cards that you can use with your students, and they're self-grading. So students will get the feedback immediately as they're working through them. You don't have to pay for them. You can find free ones on the web, or I say on the web, on the Boom Learning site. So it may take a little bit more time to look for free resources, but they are out there, and I encourage you to look for them. If you're interested, and I have this set for fifth grade teachers, specifically for my Texas friends. If you're interested, I do have these in my Teachers Pay Teachers store, and you are welcome to take a look there. I have some freebies there as well. Let me get back to presentation here. I have some freebies in my store that I would love for you to try out and to let me know whether you like them. Also, if you look at it and you're really excited about it, it's something that you want to use, I have them right now on sale. They're 20% off. Now it's a bundle, so I've got all 36 STAR eligible fifth grade standards in there. They're 20% off already because they're bundled. And then I have them on sale for an additional 20% off until New Year's Day. So you have a couple of days for that if you're interested in grabbing that to try out in your classroom this year. I do also have boom cards. And if you don't want to use boom, because that is an outside source that you'd have to utilize, I do have the same thing available via Google Forms. So you can check that out in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. All right, so I see there's some questions popping up, so I want to take a few minutes to answer questions, and then I will let you go, because I promised myself I would stick to about 45 minutes. I see we're pretty close to that right now. So I'm a talker, if you can't tell. So I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions, and then we will sign off. I totally understand if you need to duck out. I want to thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. I would love it if you want to put in the chat box there, if this is, tell me something that you've learned today, something that you're excited about trying when you're back at school. And I'm hopeful to do some more of these trainings here in the future. All right, let's see what we've got. So I see Markeisha says she wishes she was better at making creative slides. She's proud of herself for learning how to do the basics. Absolutely. And, of course, as I said earlier, this is something that I love to do. It's a passion of mine. My husband will tell you that I can spend all day at my computer making math things. It's just something that I love. But I know for many people, this isn't something that they love, but you're learning how to do it because this is where we are. So again, the things we talked about, you can take worksheets and make them into images. Now, I do want to just give you a disclaimer. It's important that you make sure you have permission to do that. A lot of the publishers and also some of the TPT sellers, many of the TPT sellers have given permission for you to do that, as long as you're just using it with your own students. But you can take worksheets or other things that you've used in the past, turn them into images, drop them in the background of those slides, and then put those elements on top of it. In fact, Teachers Pay Teachers now has their digital activities where you can do that within the Teachers Pay Teachers platform. You can build it right there and then share it with your students. So I am taking questions. I do see something from Jenny. She says, for the quiz, would you grade that's, let's see, would you grade that's my input? Oh, okay. So she's asking, would I take the grade and put it in the grade book, or would it be more an informative tool to inform what I'm going to do next? It depends. Um, for me personally, the grades that I put in the grade book were most always some type of assessment. So a journal task or a quiz that we took together as a class. Those were the type of grades I like to take. I didn't take a lot of grades on worksheets, things like that, unless it was required because my team, like we all had to be grading the same things if that was required. But when I had my choice of what I could grade, I only graded assessments that would really show how the student was able to perform on their own without my assistance or without having any kind of outside influences. They just had to sit and complete the task. But you certainly could use it as a grade in the grade book. Absolutely you could. And the great thing about Google Forms quizzes is that they're self-grading, right? Especially if they're multiple choice or very simple questions with answers, and Google will grade those for you and you don't have to do that work. So definitely take those and use them when you can. Absolutely. Okay, so Jody says she didn't think about using breakout rooms while in person. We had a lot of feedback from Mike's when we practiced as a whole group. Okay, ideas to solve this. And so that's one of those things I talked about, like just logistically, and you might need those, some better headphones. And I don't know if that's a possibility. So those are some things you kind of just have to like try out what's going to work best for you. Is it better if you have students maybe grouped? And I say group, I don't actually mean like grouped together, but in your classroom, if you have students sitting near the people that they're going to be working with, if that would be helpful. That's something too that I've been kind of working through, and I'm working with a couple of teachers on my own campus to kind of make that happen. And I know that that is an issue, is having all the students in breakout rooms at one time. I would also encourage you to not have everybody be in breakout rooms. Maybe have, like, if you're doing a teacher group, and so you've got that group in a breakout room or that group in a session, and then maybe you have one other group that's in a breakout room session, or they're working together, so that the other students then are working on some type of independent task, so you don't have all of that sound going on, because I know that that can be an issue. So my advice right now is to, of course, look for headphones. But I know the headphones, especially the ones that are going to, give us that better quality, are going to be more expensive. Reach out to your PTA, PTO, see if they can help you with that. But also limiting the number of groups that you have going on at one time. And then, of course, trying to see if you can situate students in the room where they're near the people and it might not be as loud. Those are just some things off the top of my head, and some things again that I'm working with some teachers on my own campus. I hope that's helpful for you, Jody. Okay, so Haley says, really excited about utilizing Google Sites. Yeah, resource to practice math concepts. Oh, you're very welcome, Haley. You're so welcome. This is like my favorite thing to talk about, math stations. And now with the technology piece on top of it, I have just really, really loved being able to learn about some of the new tools. I love to see what Google's coming up with now, that all of us are using the video conferencing tools. I think it's great that they are providing those tools and free, right, for teachers. So that's been a really fantastic advantage that we have going on right now. And Leslie, you're very welcome, Leslie. Yes, breakout room management is an issue. I absolutely understand that. And again, I participated in some breakout rooms when I was observing teachers, and I've noted some of those things myself. And so as I notice them when I'm working with teachers, I'm thinking about how can I help teachers kind of solve those problems. And so I offer some of these same strategies and techniques to some of the teachers that I'm working with as they're exploring breakout rooms, which I'm so proud of them for, because I'm coming from a district, y'all, that back in April, May, that was a no-no. Even coming back like first thing in August, breakout rooms, nope, we're not doing it. And I'm so pleased that now they're very open to that, because this is what we have available. If we want our students to be working together, but we can't do, physically close together small groups, this is what we have. So we have to work within the constraints of what we have right now. So you're so welcome, Leslie. Jody, you're welcome. You're welcome, Patty. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, Leslie says conferencing with kids and not broadcasting their questions is important with my dyslexic kid. Absolutely, I hear that. And so that maybe using the chat room may work really well. And I'll be honest with you, Leslie, that's something I'm going to give some thought to. But I'll tell you, our dyslexia groups right now at my own campus are run it with the students in their homeroom classroom, and they're participating in their dyslexia group from their homeroom classroom. And our kids can't move around a lot. So wherever my desk is in the classroom, that's where my desk is, and that's where I participate. Now, we do have some situations where the student was so distracted in the classroom that it wasn't working for them to be part of the dyslexia group. So we would, maybe place their desk outside the room for that period of time, or there's a desk outside the room that's available for that student. Of course, you got to do the cleaning and everything afterwards. And so for a few of our students, we've used that strategy, but for the most part, our students are participating in their dyslexia groups in the classroom. So it may just be working out ways where that student feels comfortable asking the questions, whether it's, via some type of chat session, or where they're able to ask, like they're able to pop into a breakout room or something with you, like a help room, and then they can kind of converse with you if they feel comfortable doing that. But that's a really good question, and I'm going to think on that. So, like I said, I know what I've seen and what I imagine, would work with some students in that situation. But I'd like to do some more thinking about, if you have students that are incredibly shy and self-conscious, what would you do if those tools aren't working? So I want to do some more thinking about that, Leslie. That's a great question. Yeah, 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 Leslie, you're right. The shyness and privacy, depending on, again, I'm kind of actually, like, my wheels are turning as we're kind of wrapping things up. Depending on the situation, you could also do where I mentioned we have students that sometimes sit outside of the classroom. If they're needing to ask a lot of questions, maybe they could go outside of the classroom, and then you could respond if you didn't feel like the way you were responding was going to in some way, violate that student's privacy. That might be a strategy. And I think the chat idea, I feel like the chat idea is probably the best one, but then I'm also thinking, well, if they're dyslexic, they may really struggle to write down their questions and what they're thinking. So I'm going to keep thinking on that one, Leslie. If you want, feel free to email me, and let's see if I have my email. I do have my email address here. Let me find that slide. There's my email address. If you want to email me, I'm happy to do some more thinking about it and chat with you a little bit more about that outside of the presentation here. You're very welcome, Nicole. Yeah, okay, Leslie, I hear that. Let me do some thinking on that. Like, again, email me and let's talk about it some more, because I know that that's a question that a lot of people probably have, and if it's not something that they've got right now, it may come up in the future, especially as they start venturing more into the small group instruction. So email me that, Leslie. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that one. Gang, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to have you guys here. I'm excited that you wanted to come and listen to a session on small group math instruction during your holiday break. If you think of any questions, or if you have any feedback, or even any suggestions that I can, share with other teachers, please feel free to email me. Here's my email address right there. Also, one of my big focuses this year is going to be on small group math instruction. So I'll be doing a lot of work with that. We'll be sharing a lot of ideas, especially as we're kind of navigating through this pandemic, and then what life is going to look like on the other side once we kind of get things to a manageable place. If you are interested in joining my community, if you're not on my email list, you can do that here. The web address is bit.ly /RMT join the community. So I'd love to have you as part of the community. That way you get updates on things. Again, if you're interested in those digital activities, you can find those in my Teachers Pay Teacher store. Fourth grade teachers, I will be working on you next. That's my next group of a task to work on. So this year I will be working on fourth grade digital activities, and I would love to get your feedback. So again, if you will join that community, I'll be sharing information about those activities, and also more about small groups in the coming months. You're so welcome, Leslie. It's always my pleasure. Debbie, you are welcome. All right, guys, with that, see, I talked longer than I anticipated, but I've had a lot of fun talking about this topic today. I'm glad to see that you all are excited to go back and start something new, especially with small group instruction. Again, if you've got questions, please email me. I am happy to help wherever I can. All right, with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.